Wake up with Wake.
Produce the same emotions, but secretly expecting something to change in your life. Would you agree? Brain, you begin to think equal to your environment. As you see the same people and go to the same places and do the same things at the same time, it's the external environment that's turning on different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that you know. And as long as you think equal to everything that's familiar or known to you, what do you keep creating more of? Same life. Now, the quantum law is still applying to you. You're just thinking equal to everything that you know. And you keep creating more of the same. To change, to truly change, is to think greater than your environment. And every great person in history knew this. Whether it was William Wallace or Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Queen Elizabeth I or Joan of Arc, they all had a vision. They all had an idea. Couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it, but it was alive in their mind. It was so alive in their mind that they began to live as if that reality was. But you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the event has already happened? Neuroscience says it's absolutely possible.
So the secret to becoming a millionaire is right under everyone's nose. Now, when you figure it out, you'll kick yourself because it's so glaringly obvious.
If you are familiar with my work, you know that I'm in love with the concept of mental rehearsal. I am fascinated with attention on specific imagery in your mind and become very present with a sequence of repeated thoughts and feelings. Your brain and body will not know the difference between what is occurring in the outer world and what is happening in your inner world. So when you're fully engaged and focused, the inner world of imagination will appear as an outer world experience, and your biology will change accordingly. That means you can make your brain and body look as if a physical experience has already happened without having the actual experience. What you put your attention on and mentally rehearse over and over again not only becomes who you are from a biological perspective, it also determines your future. Here's a good example. A team of Harvard researchers took a group of volunteers who had never before played the piano and divided the group in half. One half practiced a simple 5-finger piano exercise for 2 hours a day over a period of 5 days. The remaining half did the same thing, but just by imagining they were sitting at the piano without physically moving their fingers in any way.
Can I teach my body emotionally what my future will feel like before it happens? People need a rush of dopamine in order to catch their attention, or a rush of adrenaline to learn. And so that they're dependent on their outer environment to regulate their emotional state. Now, this is different now. Now, I'm going to say to you, get in that beautiful heart of yours, and I want you to feel gratitude for the event before it occurs. Well, I can't feel it because it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, that's the conditioning. That's the hypnosis. So then when you teach people how to create heart coherence and self-regulate, then it makes sense then with a coherent brain, they can hold the image of their future. They can actually then rehearse who they're going to be. They can bring up the emotions of their future. Now, here's the cool part. If they can feel their gratitude before their healing begins. If they feel their abundance or their worthiness before they have their wealth, it will start generating abundance. If they start being in love with themselves and being in love with life, they'll create an equal. That's the law. If they're in awe of life or in awe of the moment, they're going to have a mystical experience. If they're empowered, they're going to start stepping towards their success. So then when we wait for the outer world to change our internal state, that's a conditioning process, because some people will live in lack and separation their entire life because they're not creating anything. When this happens, then I'll feel happy. That's the illusion of three-dimensional reality. That's cause and effect, but feeling the emotion ahead of the experience is causing an effect. So the heart, when it's coherent, tends to produce an external magnetic field that's up to 3 meters wide. Now you've got a Wi-Fi signal. Now when you have a coherent brain, the brain could actually lay the information on that signal. And the thought of your wealth or your health can be carried on the frequency of that heart emotion. Emotions are the end product of an experience, right?
I even started to notice some of the hair growing back at the end of the first bottle.
This has literally changed my life. It comes in.
Epigenetics says that's the environment that signals the gene. If the environment signals the gene and the end product of an experience in the environment is an emotion, that person's signaling genes ahead of the environment. And now they're biologically believing, behaving, and actually becoming that person. So if the person sustains that state, and we look at novice meditators that come for a week, and 90% of them, and the metabolites, not just a few, the majority of the metabolites in novice meditators suggest that their body's in a different life. One of the keys to breaking the habit of being yourself is working toward being more observant, whether that entails being more metacognitive, monitoring your thoughts, embracing stillness, or focusing more attention on your behaviors and how elements in your environment might trigger emotional responses. So the big question here is, how do you do all this? In other words, how do you become more observant, break your emotional bonds with the body, the environment, and time, and close the gap? The answer is simple: meditation. You may have noticed that, up to this point, I have teased you with brief allusions to meditation as the way to break the habit of being yourself and begin to create a new life as your ideal self. When I use the term meditation, an image of a person seated cross-legged in front of a shrine at home, a bearded and gowned yogi sitting in a secluded cave in the Himalayas, or some other visual may come to mind. That individual may be a representation of what you understand is the way to go quiet, empty the mind, focus all of one's attention on a thought, or engage in any of the other variations of the practice of meditation. There are a lot of meditative techniques, but my wish is to help you produce the most desirable benefit of meditation, being able to access and enter the operating system of the subconscious mind so that you move away from simply being yourself and your thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions, observing those things. And then once you're there, to subconsciously reprogramming your brain and body to a new mind. When you move from unconsciously producing thoughts, beliefs, actions, and emotions, and take control of them through the conscious application of your will, you can unlock the chains of being your old self to become a new self.
We teach people this. As they start breaking through and they start being able to unfold into this field as an awareness, and they're not putting their attention on their boss or their ex or their wife or their kids or their cell phone or their WhatsApp or their Facebook, they're not thinking at all. So then, as they're sensing the space, they can't think. And if you can't think, you can't analyze. And if you can't analyze, the analytical mind is what separates the So then, it's so important then that of the infinite places you can put your attention, let's put it on your heart. Now, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Why? Because we want this center to bloom. 1,400, 1,300 different chemicals that restore and regenerate the body. Let's breathe. Let's open this up. Let's practice this. Let's start learn how to lead with our heart, a different consciousness. Yeah, in the beginning, it's a little difficult, but you stay with it and you practice it, pedal by pedal by pedal. You're placing your attention there. You're putting your own life force back into your heart. You're turning your love inward, and the body will start responding. And in a week's time, if we're doing that 3 times a day or over and over again, sooner or later, that thing's going to start blooming. And just like when your sexual organs are aroused and they're engorged with blood, this center, when you start feeling love, you make a chemical called oxytocin. Oxytocin signals nitric oxide. Nitric oxide signals a chemical called derived endothelial relaxin factor. You know what that is? It causes the arteries in your heart to literally open up. So your heart is going to be filled with blood and oxygen and nutrients. It's physiological. It's going to feel full. Now, you're going to have a heart-on, in a sense. Your heart is going to fill, right? And when that happens, you experience a level of love that passes all understanding. Your cup runneth over. I mean, it is, and people they're sobbing because they realize that this center finally, like a child.
In the Tibetan language, to meditate means to become familiar with. Accordingly, I use the term meditation as a synonym for self-observation as well as self-development. After all, to become familiar with anything, we have to spend some time observing it. Again, the key moment in making any change is going from being it to observing it. Another way to think of this transition is when you go from being a doer to a doer watcher. An easy analogy I can use is that when athletes or performers, golfers, skiers, swimmers, dancers, singers, or actors want to change something about their technique, most coaches have them watch videotape of themselves. How can you change from an old mode of operation to a new one unless you can see what old and new look like? It's the same with your old and your new self. How can you stop doing things one way without knowing what that way looks like? I frequently use the term unlearning to describe this phase of changing. This process of becoming familiar with the self works both ways. You need to see the old and the new self. You have to observe yourself so precisely and vigilantly, as I've described, that you won't allow any unconscious thought, emotion, or behavior to go unnoticed. Since you have the equipment to do this because of the size of your frontal lobe, you can look at yourself and decide what you want to change in order to do a better job in life. Decide to stop being the old you. When you can become conscious of those unconscious aspects of the old habituated self rooted in the operating system of the subconscious, you are beginning the process of changing anything about yourself. What steps do you normally take when you get serious about doing something differently? You separate yourself from your external world long enough to think about what to do and not do. You start becoming aware of many aspects of the old self, and you begin to plan a course of action related to a new self. For example, if you want to become happy, the first step is to stop being unhappy. That is, stop thinking the thoughts that make you unhappy, and stop feeling the emotions of pain, sorrow, and bitterness. If you desire to become wealthy, you'll probably decide to stop doing the things that make you poor. If you want to be healthy, to make the decision to stop being the old you to such a degree that you make room for a new personality, thinking, acting, and doing. Therefore, if you eliminated stimuli from your external world by closing your eyes and becoming quiet, decreasing your sensory input, putting your body in a state of stillness, and no longer focusing on linear time, you could become aware solely of how you are thinking and feeling. And if you began to pay attention to your unconscious states of mind and body and became familiar with your automatic unconscious programs until they became conscious, would you be meditating? The answer is yes. To know thyself is to meditate. If you are no longer being that old personality, but instead are noticing different aspects of it, wouldn't you agree that you are the consciousness observing the programs of that past identity? In other words, if you consciously observe the old self, you are no longer being it. As you go from being unaware to being aware, you are beginning to objectify your subjective mind. That is, by your paying attention to the old habit of being you, your conscious participation begins to separate you from those unconscious programs and give you more control over them. By the way, if you are successful in consciously restraining those routine states of mind and body, then nerve cells that no longer fire together no longer wire together. As you prune away the neurological hardware of the old self, you also no longer signal the same genes in identical ways. You are breaking the habit of being you.
This is Mongolia, and we are Nada, the only company in the world who's created a
We've done studies with novice meditators, and we were curious to see what kind of biological changes would take place in 1 week if you went all in. We draw blood, and we look at about 2,882 metabolites. And at the end of 7 days, the novice meditators, almost 100% of them, show substantial biological changes in their blood that suggest that they're living in a different environment. Now, here's the weird part about it. They're in a ballroom. They're actually making those changes inwardly. And I say to our research team, where are those chemicals coming from? And the person's not taking any substance. It's coming from within us. And so the nervous system starts manufacturing a whole pharmacy of chemicals equal to the person's intention and emotional state. And it's how we think and how we feel that begins to alter things in our lives.
Your goal is to become a new personality, a new state of being. So if you are a new personality, you are being somebody else, right? Your old personality, based on how you thought, felt, and acted, has created the reality that you presently are experiencing. In short, how you are as a personality is how you are in your personal reality. Remember also that your personal reality is made up of how you think, feel, and act. By doing each of those in a new way, you are creating both a new self and a new reality. Your new personality should produce a new reality. In other words, when you are being someone else, you naturally will have a different life. If you suddenly changed your identity, you would be another person, and therefore you would certainly live as someone else. If the personality called John became the personality known as Steve, we could say that John's life will change because he is no longer being John, but is now thinking, acting, and feeling like Steve. Here is another example. One time while I was lecturing in California, a woman approached me in front of the audience with her hands on her hips, intensely focused, angrily exclaiming, "How come I'm not living in Santa Fe?" I calmly replied, because the person who was just talking to me is the personality who is living in Los Angeles. The personality who would be living and is already in Santa Fe looks nothing like that. Thus, from a quantum perspective, this new personality is the perfect place to create from. The new identity is no longer emotionally anchored to known situations in your life that keep recycling the same circumstances. Therefore, it is a perfect place from which to envision a new destiny. This is the place you want to be to call out a new life. The reason why your prayers were hardly ever answered in the past is that you were trying to hold a mindful intention while being lost in lower emotions such as guilt, shame, sadness, unworthiness, anger, or fear connected to the old self. It was those feelings that were governing your thoughts and attitude. The 5% of your mind that is conscious was fighting against the 95% that is the subconscious body mind. Thinking one way and feeling another cannot produce anything tangible. Energetically, that broadcasts a mixed signal to the invisible web that orchestrates reality. Thus, if you were being guilty because your body memorized the mind of guilt, then you probably received whatever you were being, situations in your life that evoked more reasons to feel guilty. Your conscious aim could not stand up against your being that memorized emotion. As this new identity, however, you are thinking and feeling differently than the old identity. You are in a state of mind and body that now is sending a perfect signal free from your past memories. For the first time, the lens of your mind is now lifted above the present landscape to see a new horizon. You are looking to the future, not your past. Simply said, you can't create a new personal reality while you are still being the old personality. You have to become someone else. Once you are in
a new state of being. Now is the time to create a new destiny.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products. It's
But my mind still remembers, my heart's grown old. From the time I left the only place I know. And it makes me happy we didn't let go. Couldn't stand to see our love just decompose. Days of old. It takes a certain kind of love to bear this love, but it's not the type of man of you. In the morning when I wake and the sun is coming through, oh, you fill my lungs with sweetness and you fill my head with you. Shall I write it in a letter the pieces of a song I can't get out. Can I be close to you? Ooh, ooh. Can I be close to you? Ooh, oh. Can I take you to a moment where the fields are painted gold and the trees are filled